Oh, I'm live. Okay. They should have like a pause button. Hey, this is drmike.org. If you're not familiar with me, I'm kind of like a social psych guy. So, like a social scientist, I kind of examine things from a social philosophy point of view. And my podcast is called mikesmastermind.com, where I talk about my pseudo philosophy. It's really an ontology, a way of examining ultra being. And what does that mean? It's like, well, how are we being at our best and living to our full potential? I was looking at myself going, man, I want to be downtown. Well, I got like 3 hours, at least two and a half, considering a half-hour ride. And the roads are clearing. I'm in the wintry Midwest. I'm always like shaking my head going, I can't believe I live in Waukesha, Wisconsin. I'm here because my kids live here. They go to school. So I'm going to be, closest to dad and supportive, that, hey, man, we're in Wisconsin. I miss LA, but man, it's been under fire. So to my friends and folks out there, you know, man, we're dealing with a lot of stuff. This is the new year. Still, I'm recording this the last Saturday of January in 2025. Happens to be January 25. So I thought I'd just do a quick check-in. It kind of might be a little bit of a ramble, but I'm kind of like, fly by the seat of the pants type of guy. Although for the new year, I'm thinking, well, I'm looking to do, beyond typical New Year resolutions. I launched Mondays.org. I thought about this idea a couple years ago when I got the domain name because I thought, Mondays is like kind of like the key, especially it's a key day, right? Not just to wake up Monday morning, whether you're going to work or doing your own projects or school. It's kicking off the week, right? And we have our attitudes about Monday. So why not brand it and make Mondays.org sort of your Monday morning motivation kickoff? And each week would feature a different speaker. So we've done 3 so far because of how many Saturdays there's been so far in the new year. Let me stand in front of that window so I don't have an aura. My voice is in rare form today, so I thought that was another reason or excuse to get on and just give an update. But really, I've got a little bit of time and I thought this will be good, like a digital journey. So it's like a journal, but digital diary. And just say, hey, we're living in weird times, right? So we're mid-decade. And if you go to newyearsuccess.com, you can see me, 1995, mid-decade, talk about the coming millennium, 2000, 5 years away. So it's hard just to imagine that 2030, we're in 2025 right now, is just, if you think about 2020 and where we came from, we're at that equal juncture to 2030. And as we know, last year went pretty fast. Well, probably the next 5 years. We hope at least the next 4 we can get through it. So, God, we wait for the midterms 2 years from now. I don't want to get into the political stuff, but I think dashism, my writing on the D grade before we get to fascism. So just replace the F on fascism with D, dashism.com. You can read about it. It needs to be updated because it's a couple years old. I would occasionally see things I thought would be good additions, and now you see quite a lot more. And you always were aware of the manipulative structures, whether it's manufacturing consent, right, to to what Noam Chomsky, wrote way back when, right, like almost 50 years ago, to where we just see things now in a certain sense that dashism represents sort of a dementia of mind that we can live in an alternative reality. And obviously, your media sources, your propaganda, and fake news lead, but being compelled and propagated through social media and what goes viral through algorithms is really, I guess, like, is there any hope? Let's just deregulate everything so the free market can reign without any regulation or taxes on our class, our 1% of the 1% of the 1%, which is us. Dashism. So .com. I got the trademark last month for iGo. Moving on. So the iGo, if you're not following me at all, because this is probably the first time you're seeing me, if you're interested in this work or these ideas, you can go to grandtourideas.com for like a sample plattering, grandtourideas.com as in the description, the link. iGo is the projection of the mind. I was just talking to a guy yesterday who was part of the Omni Present Strategy in Texas. It's an agency. You see Alric on YouTube always talking about how you appear everywhere through retargeting. So I had my first conversation with them in relationship to the next thing I'm going to talk about. But certainly the idea, like how you show up and how you're perceived, not only is part of this of your image brand, like if you have a brand, at least your identity. Well, Igo is the selfie of the mind. And so what I've just done is kind of name it the self, imagining the selfie of the mind. We got to name it because we all have it. We're all doing it no matter what culture and where you're at. It's sort of like, well, can we examine this and do it in such a way that it becomes, revelatory in the sense that, oh, I'm projecting myself and I understand your patterns, not just your thought patterns, but your TWAs, those thoughts, words, and your way you're activating this. So, I go as an action, right? Because I go in my imagination and I see things in a certain way, and whether they're reality or not, I'm in the illusion of how I see things. I'm kind of moving forward into acting out whatever it is. And if it's the masstrance.com, always got to hit up these projects, which you can find at grandtourideas.com. You sort of find yourself wanting to be awake in the, hypnosis of society or how we've been misled from all sectors, because we're just not at you could say the quantum leap level, right? Where we're anywhere close to living in a world that considers a desirable, sustainable future, the objective, and quality of life as the initiative. So in this philosophy of ultra being is the examination, of how I am present. And this is what I call the CARES model. If we're going to have a model, some kind of scientific approach. So it's an acronym. I love my acronym, CARES. Community action research that is exemplified through how we engage. So if you are a social scientist or someone who's observing the observation of how things are, the unfoldment process is community action because we're considering things from various perspectives, but looking at things just how they are from the vantage point of being detached and yet seeing how we could label things and where there's a flow to some identity or idea that now becomes role play. So basically, we're programmed to act out. I mean, so you find yourself in sort of this is really kind of fascinating. And yet, oh my God, it's like, where are we in levels of consciousness? And what is the consideration to how we are communicating? And this dynamic was what grew out of my study of community conversations, which was my dissertation for my doctorate. And that is communityconversations.com. Now, I really need to update that site as well, too, because we need to have them. Not that I was necessarily leading them, although I learned how to facilitate and host community conversations, and yes, did lead a few because that was part of my learning. But mostly was participating and then also observing, where I would interview participants afterwards and see if there was any ahas or awakening moments. And one, the contribution of being a contributor to community does bring value because you feel like there's some self-worth in this I go identity, which again is the selfie of the mind. Or there could be an oppositional perspective that then when you contribute and participate in a community conversation, kind of gets to know your neighbor better. Go, oh, you're not as the way I thought of you at all. Oh my God, just for the last 4 decades, I just put you off because I thought that was the belief. And I'm so tied into the belief that I can't move forward in my own limited fear or box. We're all on the spectrum somewhere. We all are there. So whether we're playing out what I describe in cringe factors, yeah, the cringe, got to check it out, cringefactors.com, CRINGE, factors.com, which is hegemony, which is sort of like how we are role played in society through our conditioning, our socialization, our upbringing, and whatever identity that we play out in. An ID is simply the programming. It's internal dialogue, what I'm saying to myself about myself, what I perceive you to be saying about me that's affecting my actions, my reactions. This is what igoresearch.com, the book pitch website, reveals. So we come back to the IGO. So igoresearch.com. So the IGO is where I go, and now I begin to become a bit more aware of what. So that's described to me in the acronyms to create these tools that are formulaic from memory, but also, whether you consider it a synthetic method, but something that is sort of allowing for me to process and works for me in a trajectory so I can at least check the boxes and go, oh, am I covering the full perspective here? Because I don't want to leave something out if it's valuable in the contribution. And oftentimes the minority report is sort of what's missing. And if we get to our roots, and particularly when we want to investigate tipping point theory, which is how we're going to have this congenial change of consciousness, we're all going to have this aha, and we change our old patterning. So there's not blood in the streets, but we elegantly can bring down the stuck paradigms, the institutions that, kind of are rigid and keep us kind of in place. Well, Cringe Factors explores all this, so you definitely want to look at the cringe, class, race, where income and intelligence play out into nationality and gender roles, and ultimately your economic status. And you can even say, well, there's an ethnicity, then sort of like, oh, well, that's me because, it's what we say about the Irish or whatever, which I'm not Irish, but you know what we're talking about, right? We can make some joke about some ethnicity, but it represents something that we're sort of taught to adopt and believe, whether we do or not. It's there in our cosmology and our consciousness. So community conversations in this way allows us to integrate sort of just a sense of being in community, that I'm a contributing member, and I can analyze it from different ways, like how am I showing up in community, and who am I that I'm thinking that I'm projecting to my other members, so that I'm like a know-it-all, or like, hey, I got to be right, I'm going to argue with you, and then you kind of see yourself for who you are. These are sort of things that sort of, at least in looking at social issues and neighbors getting to meet and just sort of having this congenial aspect, the value of a community conversation can be quite revelatory. So whether choosing to look at something, we can get out of our role plays and sort of our stuckness. Now, this originally, we're right at the 11 o'clock, I'm at the 11-minute talk, and if you're with me this long, I hope there's something here, because I guess moving forward and how I have to identify and brand myself moving forward is, number one, I want to get published, but number two is, I'm looking at this as a new year, and like you, if you have goals, you can go to newyearsuccess.com and see myself in a past life in 1995 talk about it when I used to run a success club. There's sort of the idea of bringing something back, at least to get people motivated and to bring community together. And that's one of the objectives for Mondays. So whether you're a coach, consultant, somebody who, really cares in this way of being, wanting to be proactive in community, come together, because there's something that we can bring together that, at least in the sharing aspect and for consideration, can help move the narrative or the agenda, if we have the idea of getting along better and how we can share resources and just sort of communicate at a level that sort of gets us out of our stuck patterns. This is what I would describe as self-liberation, and one of the attributes to help people get out of their stuck stories, so self-liberation. And therefore is another idea that I'd like to do this year with you, if you're watching this as one of my friends, that we ought to look at a friendship fellowship, or at least you want to be a friend, why not? So friendship fellowship would forward the idea to combat loneliness, this epidemic of sort of polarization and, separation and really isolation, that even though this might be taking place online, we can meet. So friendship fellowship could be in a church or in a university setting, because it's fellowship. We can proposition community conversations in a way to talk about these social issues. And at the same time, because if we're having this connection with each other in a positive way, we uplift humanity. It's just sort of like, well, it's 1 + 1 = 2. So it's like, hey, that's it. There is the tango or the untango. It's sort of like that. It takes two to do this. So you and I can forward the agenda just by being positive examples that people can follow in the way that, oh, he's got a lot of friends. He's part of a friendship fellowship, which, and to me would be, people that you grew up with perhaps, or had really memorable past positive experiences with, but you lost touch with, maybe a lot of my friends, because I left Chicago as soon as I graduated college and moved from Chicago to San Francisco. And so, I would write letters and things to friends or call them if I had their phone number, but there was no social media. So there was no emails or ways to direct DM them, text them. So just lost touch. I was like gone. It's like, hey, UFO came down. I was abducted. I was gone. It's like, he's just gone. And sometimes I go back to Chicago. One of my best friends, he said, hey, we're all meeting at this bar. So I see the friends. And when I told them I'd already been gone 2 years, they swear to God, they thought they saw me a month ago or two. They had no idea I've been gone. So you've been gone 2 years, haven't been back. It's like, yeah, I've been gone, man. So I've been gone and I'm back. So now this whole idea of like what this new identity is, so this drmike.org, having to position myself as a social scientist so that I can help you break out into the self-liberation aspect, but also self-realize through this IGO identity. So you can read about that at igoresearch.com, or if you want to get really kind of into it, igoism.com. There's a couple other websites, but they don't have domains attached to them, but you can click through them. At any of those domains, hopefully, I enjoy doing this in the way that, okay, this is my coming out party, in the way like there's a lot to be revealed if there's going to have this identity and this internal dialogue being expressed to what is the representation here. I'm about to go in the shower, shave, and kind of dress up and go to an entrepreneur meeting at MLK Middle School in Milwaukee, which I hope to move to Milwaukee from Waukesha, because even though there's some nice people out here and they do have a couple events here and there, but over winter it's completely dead to me. Sorry. It's just sort of like, I need to get closer and closer to urban centers because I need more activity. Otherwise, I'm just here talking into my YouTube, into my PC, which is now airing live on YouTube. So, all right, I'm going to wrap up here, but number of websites for you to check out. I would invite you to come to Mondays if you want to get motivated every Monday morning, mondays.org or mondayslive.com if you'd like to be a speaker. You can click through on there and contact me. I'd love to fill up my year of every Monday having a different speaker. And we're open to topics. It should be motivational, inspirational to help start the week and get some insight into how the way that we are beings to get out of procrastination or forward our agenda towards achieving goals, right? So goal getting versus just goal setting, and productivity in the way that I can maximize my efficiency and make this community contribution. So if anything that I touched on were of interest to you, please do reach out. And I think we ought to format engagement to at least virtually and then around the country. We would have real community conversations among community leaders and people who just want to get more involved. Are concerned about deliberative dialogue. Processes, and so we can all participate a bit more and be more proactive, right? And whatever our interests are, we get to know each other. All right, well, that's kind of it, So, moving forward, I was totally going to make this about a digital diary. If you remember me talking about it at the beginning, and the way I'm reflecting on my concerns and interests. And the last thing to mention, if I did say last thing before, is that if you're interested in forming a mastermind group, it's sort of been my goal for some time. So where it would be, the master circle concept would be 12 in a circle. We could have concentric circles, but at least we start off moving up to maybe 4 or 5 or 6 initially. You invite some people and they invite some people. We fill up 12. And then if someone has a special interest, let's say just on community conversations, hey, this IGO idea, let's have IGO therapy. That would be a real interesting circle among therapists, mental health counselors, other social philosophers and scientists that sort of want to understand, like, what is this projected identity? That's a good question, isn't it? So igoresearch.com. All right. Well, so we could do a mastermind group, and this could be examining, our identity. And for those of us that want to become influencers in the sense that we are thought leaders, participating in these interactions that format a conscious community. Yeah, well, yourbrandimage.com will be sort of a webinar on that. And of course, we'll have the base interest of people who want to market their projected identity. So whether you're a blogger, podcaster, Instagram influencer, whatever. I mean, there's something there that we ought, at least because of the power of their influence and the ability to study them as well and their impacts, to bring them together so we get best practices, but their insights, and hopefully for the good of society, at least to understand maybe where we're going. We're kind of going off in the wrong direction, to sort of like turn it around a bit, at least through facilitating this kind of CARES model dialogue where we're really engaging. Oh, last mention, the phenomena is studying the structures of our experience. So I look at phenom is appreciating the here and now, and we are having an experience, right? So what is it that we're observing and interpreting? But also for those who are into mindful practices and detachment and just wanting to be present, ultra being present, a lot of this again can be found at grandtourideas.com. This latest writing is not on that, and it's called phenombook.com. So PHENOM book.com, which is the beginning understanding of phenomenology and how we can become a bit more, at least from a social science perspective, and having something that we can model within CARES as an approach to how we are facilitating our experience as social scientists by being observers, right? And sort of, we're going to be having to deal with stuck stories and perspectives that are sort of limited by either lack of hindsight or the ineffective desire awareness to understand what one is actually thinking all the time about and to reflect on it. And critical thinking, sort of like, what is learned, what is accepted, what is, you could say, going to be allowed for us to be able to get together and talk about things before we go to the no-nos or what's politically correct or something. We just look at this from a scientific point of view and talking about social science, right? So socially, how are we engaging? And is there a way of best practices that allows this quality of enlightenment to be revealed, which is the deep aspect of the phenomenon, because it is a phenomenon that we're alive, we're able to communicate, we've built this world, this Welt slush is by two German words of, a constructed world that we've built, and understanding this quality of how we're dwelling in it. It's fascinating to me. And of course, I don't know if I'm at the pinnacle peak of just sort of jumping off or going down the rabbit hole, or just sort of saying, hey, these are ideas that interest me, and there's a way that we can sort of have our ahas that sort of lead to something that would be of this quantum consciousness expression. The New Ager is going to go, oh, he's finally talking about it. No, I'm just reflecting Ultra being at her best, Ultra being loving, and sort of in the way that our congeniality allows for sort of integration of sort of like, So it's not just the ahas, it's the appreciation of, hey, that you're giving me your time and your interest, and we can engage on this level. And it's a CARES model, right? So it's community action research on this quality of enlightened engagement. And what is this? So this is how we come to explore it and openly facilitate what I call a divine dialogue, because we're divining, filtering something really of an essence. And whether you relate it to a tradition or a religion or some universal principle or spirituality, well, that could be one aspect of the filtering for you, and what that interpretation means. We're still looking at a quality standard, and whether we're exalting Christ consciousness or Buddha, or just someone who intellectually gets it to the way that they can get out of the egghead into sort of, being able to relate to people and have a life. Well, that's where this is all going. All right. So I think at 11, that would have been good. And I could have said a part 2. Because I think, for someone to watch 20 minutes, that's really quite an investment of your time. We need to sort of edit these. But whether this is a, digital diary, talking about things that whether my kids will watch in the future, it is the Phenom. So phenombook.com, and I'm drmike.org. So yeah, I'm going to get ready, but I'm glad I had this opportunity to sort of check in. And if I'm doing this the next day or so, I'll be more clean cut, but why not have this, all right, that's it. I'm going to take off here. And if I can just see where we're going. All right, I'm going to exit the screen. Thank you so much. Again, drmike.org, if this interests you. And I know it might be challenging for some because, wow, we act out our roles in such a way that, we're confronted with an identity that we become very attached to. And that goes into what I call the VLOG: vanity, anger, lust, attachment, and greed. Now, if I'm going to reference and source everything from outside, yeah, they helped inform these things, and we can find them in different ways, in traditions and people in the past who related to these things. It does form what I call a MORB identity. So MORB, the modus operandi of rational behavior, MORB, and .masstrans.com will get you there. And what makes it morbid, the idea is this internal dialogue that we ought to become a bit more aware of. My TWA, the flight I take every day. What am I thinking? What's the quality of my words? What am I saying to myself about myself or projecting about you? Being aware, right? It's eye awareness. Now I can understand how I show up and how I'm acting. And look, if someone's open to criticism because the ego is kind of removed, because there might be something valuable that's heard, that's a different level of consciousness. So how we engage with each other in this level, and our openness to be able to receive information that can be transformative, and this allowing is going to allow for this paradigm shift to occur. All right, that's it. Okay, thank you, drmike.org. All right, anything else? Just leave me a comment, please. Thank you.